Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Turning Point. I'm your host, Priya Sam, and this week I have the pleasure of speaking with Humza Mian. Humza is a popular South Asian drag queen in the Toronto area known as Mango Lassi, and his turning point came when a coworker from the queer community gave him a new perspective. That moment had a huge impact on his life, and we're going to hear more about that shortly. Thank you so much for being here, Mango.
Thanks for having me. It's so exciting.
You look fabulous. Also, by the way, I feel like I need some eye makeup tips from you.
A lot of people ask for makeup tips, but I'm shocked at how easy it is to learn makeup because I learned all online.
Yeah, I have to say, there are some pretty great videos on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always tell people that YouTube was my drag mother.
Oh, I love that. That is a great quote. Well, before we get to your turning point, let's go back to your childhood because you grew up in Mississauga, Ontario. What was life like for you growing up there?
It was pretty great. Growing up in Mississauga was nice. Growing up queer in Mississauga, when I realized I was queer, was scary. I realized how suburbs are not always the safest space for queer people to grow up. So I had to hide it for a long time.
Was there a moment when you realized you were queer, or was it something that kind of happened more gradually?
I think I started questioning why I didn't like girls in grade 4. And I remember this kid spoke up, and it's such a vivid memory. And he's actually passed, so rest in peace. But he said, "Oh, when I'm nervous, I just picture people in their underwear." And I thought my mind would immediately go to picturing girls in their underwear, but that didn't happen for me. And it was tied to something so I guess sexual for a fourth grader, but yeah, that's when I realized, or started to question, I think.
Yeah, it's really incredible how something kind of seemingly innocuous like that can actually be such a pivotal moment. And I know you mentioned in your first answer that, the suburbs really didn't feel like a safe place for a queer person. So when did you start to realize that?
Yeah. So a lot of my realizations of safety were tied to how homophobic the people around me were. So it started around grade 4, when I started to question my sexuality, wonder why the guys in my class liked girls and I didn't, and I knew, you get that feeling as a kid that something's wrong because not everyone's doing it. It was that, I think, and it sounds so. It kind of sounds childish saying that out loud. I don't know why. It's oh, they're not doing it, so I'm not going to do it either. I don't know. It's such a childish thing to say, but it sticks. When you're so young, things like that stick for years and years.
Absolutely. And I think no matter what position you're in when you're young and even for a lot of people as adults, you really always kind of want to fit in, right? You're worried about being that person who stands out. So when you're in a situation where you feel like you're thinking differently than the people around you, especially as a kid, and maybe not even having the vocabulary or the words to express that would feel scary.
Yeah, I didn't know what gay was, and I remember I didn't know the word gay, but I knew that men liking other men was wrong because of my Quran class. I started Quran class really young, and my religion had a lot to do with my um, self hate and my uh, the the time it took me to like come out and be okay with myself. And I come out in quotations because I never want an interview I do or anything that's posted about me to force people to come out. I think that's a really personal process. And it's an individual choice, you know?
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because everyone should be able to choose and make a decision about what they reveal to other people about their lives. So I'm really glad you said that. What about you mentioned your religion? Like, what about your family at this time? How did they influence how you felt as you were discovering your sexuality?
hmm I remember uh, it was one moment that, like, this is another turning point, a negative one, but it shut my femininity off almost. Like, it was so my I was playing house with my sisters. I grew up in a house of all girls. I only had female cousins. I grew up all my sister. I had no brothers. So yeah, I played whatever they played, and we played house one day. And I'm not gonna be the only uncle in house. We called it auntie because like we're brown, so we're not gonna play house. We played
Love
auntie.
it.
Yeah, so um I I would also dress up as a girl, just like everyone else, just like the girls around me. My one of my cousins told my dad one day, and my dad pulled me aside and he said, "If I ever see you do that again or hear that you've done that, I'm gonna send you to Pakistan." And that sounds like it's not a joke. Sorry, that sounds like it's a joke, but it was not a joke. He was dead serious, and that scared me. And I the switch turned off and started focusing on more masculine things I can do.
This expectation and this idea of having to be hyper masculine is really common, I think, in a lot of
Mhm.
South Asian
Yeah.
communities. I know myself. My background is Indian, and I know that there are very similar expectations. So, and I imagine for you, as you were kind of starting to discover who you are and confronting some of these things and then being given this message that that side of you is not acceptable or should
Yeah.
not be expressed, like that must have been, I'm sure it was traumatizing in some ways.
Yeah. And it was confusing because at that age, like this was maybe somewhere in middle school or something. Um, so I was maybe 11, 12, 13. And by that time, my mom had shown me photos of me as like a 3, 4 year old dressed up in women's clothes. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a South Asian thing, but so many of my male friends have photos of themselves as like toddlers dressed up in full Desi wedding attire with like a bindi, lipstick, a coca, like it's, and I had seen those photos and I thought it was okay. I don't know. I thought like, it's not like I was going to go out dressed up in dresses or anything. I just thought it was okay to be girly and it wasn't. So yeah, I had to be like really hyper masculine um, up until I'd say after high school.
So in this phase when you were kind of trying to be hyper masculine, like what did that look like for you?
It was what I was surrounded by. I grew up in Mississauga. I went to Mississauga Secondary, and that school was known to be very, very brown. There were a lot of South Asian students there, and all the guys. There was like almost like a dress code, the sweatpants, and like this is like 2006, 2007. Um, so it was just like sweatpants, baggy sweatpants, oversized sweatshirt. Um, you know, runners, very lazy. That was the look. Everything was baggy and slouchy. So that's how I dressed. and that's what I had to do to fit in, to protect myself, right? I couldn't go out dressed. I couldn't. I didn't even know what drag was at that time, but I couldn't go out in makeup or anything. I couldn't show that I had interest in it.
And you, I mean, of course, like we know now you didn't live like this forever, but I imagine it must have been hard kind of suppressing and hiding this part of yourself. And then there's this major turning point for you. And this time it's a positive one when you meet another queer brown person. So tell me what happened.
So I got a job at Guess when I was 18, and oh, I was 17. And there was it was orientation day, I think. So this is the Guess at Dixie Mall. And this was, we opened that store. um, One of my assistant managers was queer, and like it was so, he was so visibly queer. And I had never seen that before in a positive light. Like he was at, like he was in a role, a management role. Um, and he was doing okay for himself, you know. We became friends later when we started working together, but like he knows that like he means so much to me because that was my first time seeing someone femme, queer, and brown living their life happily.
Wow.
Yeah, usually you just hear like horror stories on media. You don't really hear the positives, especially in our community. Um, we're like we're the bottom of the barrel, you know. Like if you were to compare us to anything, it would be well, drag queens. If you were to compare to something back home, it would be hijras or kusras, right? And they are always invited to the party, but they're never let in. You know, they're just everyone's entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. I imagine like especially if like that's all the messaging that you're getting from the people around you, and then like you have this life-changing moment where you see this person who looks like you and who is queer, who is brown, who is doing well in their job. So did
Mhm.
this almost like give you permission to start expressing some parts of yourself that you had been hiding?
Yeah, for sure. I think transparency can save a lot of people's lives. And I think just being visible and being transparent about your identity helps people. Uh, Even things like holding hands in public, you know, it's so normal for a straight couple to do that, but when a queer couple sees that, and if I were to see that when I was younger, I would have felt so, I don't know, like safe, or I would have felt some kind of hope, you know.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there's so much to be said for that kind of
Yeah.
representation. So, did you have a lot of conversations with this coworker? Like, did you learn about his story, or how did you kind of start to learn about a different way that you could live your life?
I um I didn't really ask him about his personal life till later. Uh, I think for someone who's so, it was intimidating to see someone so comfortable in their own skin and something that you wanted to be, and that was unattainable at the time for you. So like I didn't ask him till a lot later, till we had worked many shifts together. But yeah, he told me that he was out and he was happy. Um, his family knew, and yeah, and they were all supportive. And yeah, he was from Mauritius, though, so like I know that the culture there's a little bit different than where my parents were from. They're from Pakistan, so yeah.
How did this experience of meeting him change the way you started to live your life and to express yourself?
I allowed me to be more comfortable being feminine in public. I would see him out in his skinny jeans and his like, we could only wear guest clothes, and he would wear like women's clothes, and that was so, I don't know, it was nice to see that. It was almost liberating. And it would be things like t-shirts or like a tank top. Like it wouldn't be a dress or anything. It's just like those little things, a blazer, you know? It was just like, okay. I see how you can uh use that femininity and make it work for yourself and like not be ashamed. And I don't know, it was just so, it was inspiring to see him.
Yeah, wow. We talked a little bit about family earlier and kind of these expectations of being hyper masculine. Did they know anything about how things were changing for you at this time?
My sisters did. So um my sisters have been like by my side throughout the entire like coming out process, I guess. And I came out like super slow. I told them I was bisexual first, and then I kept like increasing the percentage. It sounded, in hindsight, all this sounds so so stupid, but um I and it was so obvious what I was trying to do. But I'm thankful that they played along with my my percentage coming out. It went from like 60 to 100 in like 6 months. So,
You know what? It's not stupid at all. I think it's actually so relatable. I've had so many friends who have gone through similar experiences, you know?
mm,
And I also think like it makes sense because you're having all of these like conflicting messages from like the people around you and your family and
mm,
even just what we see in traditional media around
mm,
us, you know,
yeah,
there's at that time still, and even now there still should be more representation than there is, but at that time there was even less
mm,
than there is now. So, yeah, I mean, I really actually appreciate you just sharing that honestly because I think a lot of people can relate
yeah,
to that experience.
yeah.
So, tell me about getting involved in drag. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I got involved in drag about 6 years ago, I think. Um, it was on Halloween. Like the person I was dating at the time was really into RuPaul's Drag Race, and then I got into it. And then we went to our first drag show together, and it was so cool. Before that, I'd only seen Queens and at Cruise and Tangos downtown. Um, yeah, and I was hooked on the show, and then I was like, you know what, we're gonna go and drag for Halloween. And so Halloween was the first time I went out in drag. I'm a Halloween baby.
I love it. That's did it look anything like what you have today, or was it completely different?
No, oh my God, it was so awful. I shaved. I will never shave for drag again. Like I might, but I thought like, oh, I need to be feminine. So I shaved my beard. Big mistake. I look like a 16-year-old when I don't have my beard. So boy me suffered for Humza suffered for like 2 weeks until my beard grew back. Thank God I'm brown and it grew back in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Right.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I spent like 4 hours doing my makeup. I ended up looking like I like hit my face in flour or something. Like it was just awful. The wig was flat. I had no padding, so I think I padded my bum, I think. But I didn't know how to pad it properly at the time, so I literally bought one of those giant body pillows from Walmart. I ripped it open and I took the cotton out of it and I shoved it in my pantyhose. So I had like
I love it.
the
DIY butt
lumpiest.
padding.
Yeah, I was walking around the village with the lumpiest ass. Probably looked like curdled milk. It's pretty gross, but
Oh, so this is like a fun experience for Halloween.
yeah.
When did your first drag performance happen?
That happened much later. So after that Halloween, I kept doing drag at home and I kept practicing makeup. And then I went to LA the next year to RuPaul's Drag Con. And that's where, at that time, not a lot of people were doing Desi drag. So I went in full like Desi attire and that caught a lot of people's attention. And that's when the Instagram thing happened. So yeah, after that, I came back to Toronto. I got modeling gigs right after from the South Asian community, actually. It was my first like modeling gig was Tamil designers from Scarborough. Um, yes, and I'm so grateful to them because I they took a chance. Like that's risky putting a a queer brown drag queen in a Kanchipuram sari. Like that's I know a lot of people weren't happy about that. So that's a traditional wedding. Sorry for those who don't know. Yeah, and it's like it's sacred, and yeah, uh, it happened.
Yeah, wow. So this all like once it sounds like once that first like once you made that first appearance, it sounds like things started to really like happen very quickly for you.
Yeah, yeah, and it hasn't. I'm thank God, like thankfully, it hasn't slowed down. I'm still getting opportunities, and I'm like super grateful that I'm able to be this voice for people, and that I was able to like reignite the South Asian drag spark online and in Toronto's village as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because I imagine you must thinking back to that moment when you met your first queer brown person, your colleague at Guess, I imagine the impact that you're having on the South Asian community with what you're doing now is also massive. So what do you hear from people?
Oh, I hear from people almost daily. It's people all around the world telling me about their stories, how my visibility has helped them come out or be more comfortable with themselves. I do hear a lot of people's sad stories too, who aren't able to be themselves or even express how they want to feel. And I've been there too. And although I'll never be able to be in someone's shoes, I can empathize with them. You know.
Oh, for sure. And I'm sure that means the world to those people too. I mean,
I hope
just
so. Yeah.
now yeah, I mean, that representation that you had in your colleague, now you're becoming that
Mhm.
person and you are that person for a lot of other people too. Um you really sort of straddle two worlds here because you know you do your performances as Mango Lassi. You've really as we talked about kind of helped to promote that it's okay to be queer in the South Asian community. um what about with your family now? Has anything changed there?
Um, Things are pretty much the same. I'm out to all my cousins and my family around my age. The older folks don't. My parents also don't. I haven't like come out to them per se. So they've asked me, of course, and they've met my partner. They've met my friends. Like my friends are very queer. Um, and I'm sure they know, but it's one of those things where once you say it, you can't take it back. Like it becomes a reality once it comes out of your mouth, especially for brown people. I don't know what it is. I blame the dramas, the Indian dramas. But once it comes out of your mouth, it becomes solid fact, right? So I feel like it's just one of those scenarios. And I'm okay with that. And I know they're okay with it. We have a great relationship. And yeah, you don't have to come out to be happy. It sure probably helps, but I'm pretty happy. So I don't know.
You know, I'm really glad that you said that because I think that is something that we don't hear often. And this idea that you can choose how you want to live your life, what you want to reveal to who, I think it's just something that we don't hear a lot.
Yeah, I think we don't hear that because it's not a marketable story. People don't want to hear about the brown kid who um, was dressed up by his mom in women's clothes as a kid and then was told not to and then became hypermasculine and then is still not out after becoming comfortable with himself like in his 20s. Like I if you're not out, it's not marketable. If you're not out, you're not a real gay, you're not a real queer person. um and it sucks that it's still like that. But unless you're a blonde haired, blue eyed person with white skin, no one's gonna watch, and it's hopefully going to change one day, and it's because of people like myself and other brown queer artists, that things are starting to change. And a show that like I was uh, happy to be part of, and that is all about queer brown people, is called Sort of on CBC Gem. Um, and yeah, Bilal in it is amazing. Like they're such an amazing actor.
Oh, that's great. I'll have to check that
Yeah,
out. I haven't seen it
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
I think that you hit on something there that I also don't think is talked about often, and that's the experience of people of color in the queer community. So, do you find that, like, is there a lot of racism faced by people of color in the queer community?
I think so. I've experienced racism myself. I was and at a local bar, and one of the queens was on stage, and um, she said "Assalamu alaikum" to a table of us, and all my friends. One of my friends is Sikh. He wears a turban, and that's the reason she said it. And then she started mocking an Arab accent, like an Arab voice, and so I called her out on social media. I wasn't going to do it in the bar because people were laughing, and at that time, the time I was there, like um, a lot of older queer men were there, older white queer men, like 50s, 60s. So like I was afraid, and so I said it online, and um, they of course denied it. They apologized. The bar owner reached out and said they're gonna do some sensitivity training with their staff regarding racism and what's appropriate on stage and what isn't. Yeah, and then COVID happened and then everything shut down. So I'm confident that the bar took those changes into consideration, especially considering what happened over the last 3 years politically over the world. So um, yeah, there's racism everywhere. Yeah, this was the second time this queen had done it.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully it was the last time. I mean, I think it's so important to call these things out, but it is also it's not easy, and like you have
It's
to of
scary.
course think about your own safety too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
We literally, I live right downtown. There were like KKK, there were Nazis in the street literally 3, 4 days ago. So like I am scared. It's scary. It's a scary time to be alive sometimes.
Yeah, the world certainly does not feel like a safe place right
Mm.
now. And I think, in particular, communities of color, marginalized communities like the LGBTQ2 plus community, of course, I think we're all feeling it even more. And I think in a time when we're all really isolated still, too, it makes it a lot more challenging.
Hmm. Yeah.
I wonder, as you I know
Heavy.
that was heavy. I know that was heavy.
Of
But thank you for, thank you for sharing all of that. I know
course,
we've
it's
talked
important.
about
Yeah.
it is important. Yeah. And I know we've talked about some really personal parts of your life today. I wonder, as you kind of reflect back on your turning point, kind of making your first queer brown friend, what do you hope that other people can learn from your experience?
Um, I hope that they're patient with themselves. This isn't like an overnight thing. You're always going to be coming out to people. Um, whether it's your whether it's like literally holding your partner's hand down the street, um, or like announcing it on Facebook or whatever, or choosing not to come out and just having that peace to yourself. That's important. Be patient with yourself and be safe. Duh.
That's That is such great advice. I have to ask about Mango Lassi. So tell
Yeah.
me about, first of all, love the name so much,
Thank
but tell
you.
me about who she is. Yes, I want to know everything.
So her name it was dirtier before. It was Manghoe, Lassi.
Okay,
But we
risque. I
changed
love
that.
it.
We changed it. We're more PG now. Um, so it's just Mango Lassi. I, of course, got the idea from the drink. And a lot of drag queens, they take like drinks and they just use it as their name. That's where I got the name from. She's just every feminine part of Hamza that I wasn't able to express all those years. That's who she is. Um, and she has a beard. You know, some girls have beards.
I absolutely love it. So now that things are opening up again, are do you have upcoming performances? I'm wondering like where can people find you aside from on social media?
I'm taking a little break from live performances. I'm gonna wait till things are, well, that's a little bit of a lie. I'm performing at my friend's wedding. I'm allowed to say this now. So, it's in Mexico. So that's super exciting. That's gonna be my comeback, in April. But I'm gonna focus on like things that some drag passion projects until then. Like there's some creative stuff I really want to do. So I'm gonna get that out of the way before I head to Mexico to perform in the sun. Oh, it's gonna be so good.
That is very exciting. When did you mentioned going to LA and how this kind of like skyrocketed your drag career. How long ago was that trip to LA?
Oh, I think that was 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, yeah. So a lot
Yeah.
has happened in
Oh
the
yeah.
last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Do you have like an ultimate goal, or are you kind of just like feeling out, seeing what happens?
Um, I I wanna I want to farm. That's the goal. I want I want to inspire as many people as I can, especially the queer brown kids, because they need it. Because I needed it and I didn't have it when I was a kid. Um, and I want a farm.
Tell me more about this farm. Like, do you want to have like
What?
animals? Or are you like,
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a veterinary technician by day. Um, so I like animals are my love. Like I want a farm. I want dogs on there. I want goats. I want sheep. I want like one horse maybe or two. Um, and I want like a cow for milk and cheese and like just get old with the cow. I've seen people be so cool with their cows, like give them like spa days and stuff. I want to be one of those people. That's the dream.
okay, I love everything about this. Like,
Ugh.
yes, and please, like, I want to be invited to your farm at some
Oh, of
point for
course.
like
Of
some
course. There's
fresh
gonna be
cheese.
a ranch opening, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing your experiences, for all that you do to inspire other people and to support members of the queer community and people of color. I just think your work is incredible and it's so important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so, so much. It means a lot to me.
And I look forward to continuing to follow your career as well.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you so much to all of you for watching and listening today. If you're enjoying the show, please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. You can also follow the show on YouTube, and you can find me on social media at Priya Sam. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and of each other.